They say you can't judge a book by its cover. But in the glittering, cutthroat world of the 1%, that's the only judgment that matters. So when a group of high society bullies saw a woman in a simple grey dress sitting alone at an exclusive bar, they saw weakness. They saw a nobody. They pushed her. They mocked her. They knocked her down, laughing as they did. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that the simple woman they just humiliated was Annalise Blackwell, the fiercely private and deeply loved wife of the most powerful and ruthless billionaire in the city, and he just found out. The Gilded Garter wasn't just a bar, it was a statement. Tucked away on a cobblestone street in Soho, it was the kind of place that didn't have a sign, only a reputation. Inside, it was a world of dark mahogany, burnished brass, and velvet curtains the color of dried blood. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the sharp botanical tang of artisanal gin. The clientele was a curated collection of beautiful, wealthy, and bored individuals who spoke in low, confident murmurs. And then there was Anna. Annalise Blackwell sat at a small, two-top table near the back, a position that afforded her a perfect view of the room's subtle theatrics. She was nursing a simple glass of sparkling water with a lime, her phone dark on the table beside her. She was waiting for her sister, Sarah, who, as usual, was running late. To the casual observer, Anna was invisible, and that was precisely how she liked it. She wore no makeup, save for a touch of lip balm. Her auburn gold hair was pulled back in a simple, elegant knot. Her dress was a plain, grey wool sheath, perfectly tailored, but utterly devoid of any logo or identifying mark of luxury. The only piece of jewelry she wore was a thin, unadorned platinum band on her left ring finger. She looked, in the context of the room, simple. She was watching the bartender, a man named Miguel with slicked-back hair and a vest so tight it looked like armor, perform a symphony with a cocktail shaker. He was a master of his craft. Anna appreciated mastery, whether it was in a boardroom, a kitchen, or behind a bar. The heavy front door swung open, admitting a blast of cold October air and a trio that immediately shifted the room's gravitational pull. They didn't just enter. They conquered. The leader was a woman in her late 20s with a severe blonde bob and a face that was beautiful in the way a marble statue is beautiful, cold, perfect, and lifeless. She was poured into a crimson dress that probably cost more than Anna's entire wardrobe. This was Beatrice van der Meer, an heiress to an old-money real estate fortune. Flanking her were her disciples. Chloe Davies, a brunette with a nervous laugh, echoed Beatrice's style but lacked her bone-deep arrogance. And then there was Tad Beaumont, a man with a floppy haircut and the weak chin of someone who had never been told no in his entire life. They scanned the room, which was full. Their eyes, predatory and dismissive, swept over the patrons. And then Beatrice's gaze landed on Anna, sitting alone at her two-top. Beatrice glided over, her two shadows in tow. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was not a question, it was a command. It was high and sharp, like the sound of ice cracking in a crystal glass. Anna looked up, her expression pleasant. "Hello." "We need this table," Beatrice announced, gesturing to the empty chair where Sarah was supposed to be. Anna blinked, a small, polite smile gracing her lips. "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm waiting for someone." Beatrice let out a short, incredulous laugh. She looked at Chloe. "She's waiting for someone." Chloe giggled nervously. "So funny." Tad leaned in, his cologne overwhelming. "Look, sweetheart, you've had your water. This is prime real estate. You can't just squat." "I'm afraid I am waiting," Anna repeated, her voice still quiet, but a new firmness underpinning the words. My sister should be here any moment. Beatrice's eyes did a slow, deliberate crawl down Anna's grey wool dress, lingering on the simple flats, peeking out from under the table. Her lip curled. Right. Your sister? She sneered, the implication hanging heavy in the air. People like you don't have sisters who come to places like this. Look, this table is wasted on. Whatever this is. She waved a dismissive hand at Anna. We are paying customers. As am I, Anna said, gesturing to her glass. Oh, please, Beatrice scoffed. Miguel, she barked, snapping her fingers. The bartender, who had been studiously ignoring them, finally looked over, his face a mask of professional neutrality. This person is bothering us. Can you find her somewhere more appropriate to sit? The kitchen, perhaps? Miguel's eyes met Anna's. He was a regular at the soup kitchen where Anna volunteered on Thursdays. He knew her simply as Annie, the woman who was better at chopping carrots than anyone he'd ever met. He didn't know her last name, but he knew her character. Miss Vandermeer, Miguel said, his voice smooth and low. Mrs. Thorne is a guest like any other. The table is hers until she decides to leave it. He'd used the name she'd given at the kitchen, her maiden name. Beatrice looked momentarily stunned, as if a piece of furniture had just spoken back to her. Mrs. Thorne, how very quaint. Fine. But she didn't leave. Instead, she and her friends took the only other available spot, a tiny awkward table right next to Anna's, so close their chairs were almost touching. The move was aggressive, a deliberate invasion of her space. Can you believe the nerve? Beatrice said, her voice now pitched to carry. They'll let anyone in off the street now. This place has gone to the dogs. Probably bought that dress at a charity shop. It's like she doesn't even know where she is, Chloe whispered, loud enough for Anna to hear every word. She probably doesn't, Tad snickered, pulling out his phone. Probably thinks this is the Olive Garden. Anna picked up her phone. A text from Sarah. Stuck in a meeting from hell. CEO just flew in from Singapore. Going to be hours. I'm so sorry. Rain check. Anna sighed softly, not in frustration at her sister, but in mild disappointment. She typed back. No problem. Work first. Talk tomorrow. Love you. She put her phone away and began to gather her small purse. She would just leave. It wasn't worth the energy. The air was too thick with entitlement, and she had no patience for it tonight. She laid a $20 bill on the table for her $3 water and prepared to stand. The moment Anna began to move, Beatrice saw it as a victory. She smirked at Chloe, a triumphant, ugly little expression. See? All it takes is a little pressure. The mice always scurry back to their holes. Anna stood up, pushing her chair back gently. She was a woman of average height, but she held herself with a quiet poise that often made her seem taller. She turned to move past their table, which was blocking the narrow aisle. Excuse me, she said. Beatrice, who was in the middle of taking a large sip of her third martini, which she'd ordered by screaming, "The usual," at a passing busboy, looked up. She saw Anna, waiting patiently, and in that moment, a switch flipped in Beatrice's mind. The boredom, the alcohol, and the visceral offense she took at Anna's simplicity all coalesced into a single, malicious impulse. "You want to get by?" Beatrice said, her voice syrupy sweet. "By all means." And she stumbled. It was a theatrical, poorly executed lurch, but it was effective. Beatrice fell forward, accidentally, shoving her entire body into Anna's. The martini glass flew from her hand. But it wasn't Anna who got the worst of it. The sticky, dark pink liquid of a cosmopolitan, Beatrice's usual, splashed all over the front of Beatrice's own crimson dress. There was a collective gasp from the surrounding tables. Beatrice looked down at her ruined dress. Her face, which had been set in a mask of mocking arrogance, contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, and she turned it all on Anna. "You!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the suddenly silent bar. "You idiot! Look what you made me do! You clumsy, simple cow!" Anna, who had been knocked off balance by the shove, was pressed against the wall. I didn't." "You did. You bumped into me. You did this on purpose." Beatrice was vibrating with fury. This dress was new. It was a one-of-a-kind. "You can't even stand still. My God, can't you do anything right?" Tad, seeing the drama unfold, had his phone out. He was filming, a delighted, cruel grin on his face. "This is gold," he whispered to Chloe. "You'll pay for this," Beatrice snarled. She grabbed a cloth napkin from her table and began dabbing furiously at the stain, only making it worse. "This dress is worth more than your entire life. You probably don't even have insurance." Anna just stood there, taking it. The humiliation was a physical force, pressing her against the wall. She could feel the eyes of everyone in the bar. Some were curious, some were amused, and some were filled with pity. The pity was the worst. "What's the matter?" Beatrice taunted, stepping closer until she was directly in Anna's face. Anna could smell the gin on her breath. "Cat got your tongue? Or can't you simple people string a sentence together?" She then did the unforgivable. She reached out and pushed Anna. Not a stumble, not an accident. A hard, two-handed shove to the chest. "Get out!" Beatrice hissed, her voice low and venomous. Anna, unprepared, stumbled backward. Her heel caught on the leg of her own table, and she went down. She didn't fall hard, but she fell. She landed in a heap on the polished floor, her purse spilling its contents. A tube of lip balm, a set of keys, a small, well-worn paperback of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and her wallet. The entire bar went silent. Even Beatrice seemed momentarily shocked by what she had done. Tad's phone was still recording. "Holy," he breathed. Anna stayed on the floor for a beat, her heart hammering. The fall had knocked the wind out of her, but more than that, it had knocked the composure out of her. She was, for the first time in a very long time, completely and utterly humiliated. Then, from the floor, she looked up. She looked past Beatrice's triumphant, sneering face. She looked at Tad's phone, the little red light glowing. She looked at Chloe's horrified but fascinated expression. She looked at Miguel, who was already coming around the bar, his face like thunder. She pushed herself up. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Her hands were shaking, but her voice, when she spoke, was shockingly clear. "Are you finished?" she asked. It wasn't a question of defiance. It was a question of genuine curiosity. "Are you finished with this performance?" The question so disarmed Beatrice that she had no response. She just stood there, her mouth open. Anna calmly knelt and began gathering her things. Her book, her keys, her lip balm. She put them back in her purse. Her wallet was open, and a few cards had slipped out. A library card, a Metro card, a blood donor card. You, Beatrice stammered, trying to regain the upper hand. "You're paying for this dress." "Miguel," Anna said, standing up. Her grey dress was now smudged with dust from the floor. "My apologies for the disturbance. Please add Miss Vandermeer's dress to my tab." Miguel, who had reached her side, just stared. "Mrs. Thorne, you don't have to." "Please," Anna said. "And a new martini for her. It seems she spilled hers." She turned and looked Beatrice dead in the eye. The heiress, for all her bluster, actually took a step back. There was something in Anna's gaze, not anger, not fear, but a profound, bottomless disappointment that unnerved her. "I hope the rest of your evening," Anna said, her voice barely a whisper, "is everything you deserve." And with as much dignity as she could muster, she walked out of the Gilded Garter, the sound of Tad and Chloe's nervous, belated laughter echoing behind her. The cold night air hit Anna like a slap, clearing her head instantly. The adrenaline from the encounter was already fading, leaving behind a cold, hollow ache. She didn't walk to the corner to hail a cab. She didn't pull out her phone to order an Uber. She walked 2 blocks east, then 1 block north, to a quiet, tree-lined street. A discreet black sedan, a Maybach S680, so devoid of chrome it looked like a shadow, was parked in a tow-away zone. It had been there for 30 minutes, utterly ignored by the city. The driver's side door opened, and a man in a simple black suit stepped out. "Mrs. Blackwell?" he said, his voice a calm, British baritone. He opened the rear door. "Thank you, David," Anna said, sliding into the buttery leather interior. David was ex-SS and had been with her husband, Marcus, for a decade. He was the head of their personal security detail, and tonight he was on driver duty because Anna had insisted she didn't need a team to go meet her sister. He got back in the driver's seat, the partition between them gliding up silently. He didn't ask why she was early or why her dress was rumpled. He simply drove. The car moved silently through the city, a ghost in the river of yellow taxis and honking SUVs. They didn't go to a glittering tower on Billionaire's Row. They drove to a quiet, historic brownstone in Gramercy Park, one that had its own private garden, accessible only by a special key. The building was, in fact, 4 brownstones, hollowed out and combined into a single, magnificent, and completely invisible urban fortress. David parked in the underground garage. Anna took the private elevator straight up to the penthouse. The doors opened not into a cold museum of modern art, but into a home. The walls were lined with overflowing bookshelves. The furniture was comfortable, worn and clearly chosen for function, not form. A fire was crackling in a massive stone fireplace, and sitting on the floor in front of it, surrounded by laptops and blueprints, was Marcus Blackwell. Marcus was a paradox. To the world, he was the demon of Silicon Alley, a ruthless, reclusive tech billionaire who had built his empire, Blackwell Industries, from nothing. He was known for hostile takeovers, for vaporizing competitors, and for an intellect that moved at a speed most people found terrifying. To Anna, he was just Marcus, the shy, brilliant man she'd met in a college library, back when his empire consisted of a single, overheating desktop computer and a dream about data encryption. He looked up as she entered, his intense grey eyes instantly softening. "Hey, you're early." "Sarah Flake again?" "Meeting," Anna said, her voice tight. She walked over and kissed the top of his head. His hair was messy, as if he'd been running his hands through it for hours. "Good," he mumbled, his eyes already drifting back to the screen. "I'm on the verge of a breakthrough with the new quantum something." He stopped. He smelled her perfume, and underneath it, the stale, boozy scent of a bar. And something else. Fear. He turned, really looking at her this time. He saw the dust on her dress. He saw the faint red mark on her cheek where she must have braced her fall. He saw the tremor in her hand. His entire demeanor changed. The distracted genius vanished, replaced by the demon. His eyes went flat and cold. "Annie," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "What happened?" Anna tried to wave it off. "It's nothing. Truly. A woman just spilled a drink." "You fell." It wasn't a question. "I stumbled." "Who was she?" "Marcus, please. It's not a big deal. It was just an unpleasant encounter. Some very drunk, very unhappy people. I'd rather just forget it." She didn't want to tell him. Not because she was afraid of him, but because she knew what he was capable of. She had seen him dismantle a too-big-to-fail bank because its CEO had been rude to a waiter. Marcus had a very specific, very rigid code of ethics, and at the top of that code was a zero-tolerance policy for bullies. He saw the world in code, ones and zeros. You were either a good person or you were an obstacle. "Anna," he said, standing up. He was a tall man, and in the low light of the fire, he looked imposing. "You're shaking. Tell me what happened. Tell me who it was." "I don't know their names," she lied, but she had heard Miguel say it. Ms. Vandermeer. "Marcus, I mean it. Let it go. It was just a stupid, humiliating moment in a stupid bar. If you react, it just gives it power. It makes it real. I just want a shower and a cup of tea." He searched her face for a long time. He saw the exhaustion. He saw the humiliation she was trying to hide. And he saw the strength. She was not a damsel in distress. She was his partner. "Okay," he said, the ice in his eyes receding, replaced by the familiar warmth. "Okay, Annie. Tea and a shower. I'll put this away." He gestured to his work. She smiled. A real smile this time. "What's the breakthrough?" He let out a breath, visibly forcing himself to stand down. "I think I've just figured out how to make lithium-ion batteries obsolete. Using... well, it's complicated. Involves carbon nanotubes and a whole lot of math." "Well," she said, going to the staircase. "You go make batteries obsolete. I'm going to go wash the day off." He watched her climb the stairs. He waited until he heard the water in their master bathroom turn on. Then he walked back to his desk, but not to his blueprints. He picked up his phone, a nondescript black slab of metal that had no branding and was probably the most secure device on the planet. He made a call. "Gavin," he said, his voice flat again. "I need you. Now." He hung up. He looked out the window at the sleeping city. "An unpleasant encounter," he repeated to himself. He strode over to the elevator and rode it down to the security hub in the sub-basement. Gavin was already there, materializing from a side office. He was a tall, lean man with the same quiet intensity as David. "Sir, my wife was at a bar tonight, the Gilded Garter in Soho. She left at approximately 9:15 p.m. She was distressed. I want to know what happened." "Yes, sir. I want everything, Gavin. I want CCTV from inside and outside the bar. I want audio. I want the names of every person she interacted with. And I want to know who pushed her." Gavin didn't even blink. "Understood, sir. It will take a few hours to acquire the internal footage." "You have one," Marcus said. He looked at the wall of monitors. "And Gavin, find out who Ms. Vandermeer is." Gavin was better than his word. It didn't take an hour. It took 45 minutes. Marcus sat in the cooled, dark security room, a cup of untouched tea growing cold beside him. On the main screen, a multi-angle feed played. He watched the entire encounter from 4 different angles, including a high-resolution camera above the bar that Gavin had acquired from the bar's cloud backup. He watched Beatrice's approach. He heard her sneer, "We need this table." He watched Anna's polite refusal. He listened to the taunts. "Charity shop." "Olive Garden." He felt a cold, familiar rage building in his chest. This was the world he tried to shield her from, the world of casual cruelty she always insisted on facing head-on. Then he watched the stumble. He watched the shove. He zoomed in, frame by frame. It was deliberate, malicious. And then he watched his wife fall. He watched her spill her purse. He watched her get up, her hands shaking. He listened to her impossible, infuriating grace. Please add Miss Vandermeer's dress to my tab. Jesus, Annie, he whispered, clenching his fist so hard his knuckles turned white. On a second monitor, Gavin pulled up a file. Beatrice Vandermeer, he said, his voice a neutral monotone. 28 years old, only daughter of Hendrik Vandermeer, CEO of Vandermeer Holdings, a legacy real estate and development firm. They've been in New York since the 1800s. The name clicked. Marcus turned to Gavin. Vandermeer Holdings, aren't they? Yes, sir, Gavin said, anticipating. They are the lead bidder on the Hudson Yards Omega project, the multi-billion-dollar tech integration contract you're opening for tender next month. Marcus stared at the screen, at Beatrice's sneering face, frozen on the CCTV feed, at her father's company logo on the other screen, the two images blurred. They were the front-runners, Gavin continued. Hendrik Vandermeer has been lobbying your office for a meeting for 6 months. He's also a co-chair for this weekend's Metropolis Ball at the Met. The gala, Marcus said. He and Anna were supposed to attend. It was the one event she truly despised, but his company was a primary sponsor of the new technology wing, and his presence was non-negotiable. Yes, sir. Beatrice is on the junior committee. She's expected to be there, as are her friends. Gavin brought up 2 more files. Chloe Davies, daughter of a city councilman, and Tad Beaumont. His family owns a lot of print media. Gavin then pulled up a 3rd window. It was a social media platform, Tad's private, locked Instagram story. Mr. Beaumont was kind enough to document the encounter, sir. He pressed play. Marcus watched the shaky, gleeful phone footage. He heard Tad snickering. Look at this little mouse. He heard Beatrice's sharp whisper, you simple thing. And he watched Anna fall, this time from a low, cruel angle. The video was captioned, some trash taking itself out at the gutter. LOL. Marcus Blackwell's face became a mask of absolute stillness. He felt no rage, no heat, just a cold, calculating and profound sense of clarity. Gavin, he said. Sir, make a copy of that video, the high-resolution one, all angles. Sync the audio. I want it. Pristine. Yes, sir. And the social media post. Save it. All of it. Done, sir. Then erase our footsteps. The gilded garter. Tad Beaumont's account. We were never there. This is a private matter. No one knows we have this but you and me. Of course, sir. One more thing. I want a full, deep dive financial and operational analysis of Vandermeer Holdings. I want to know every partner, every loan, every project, every potential weakness. I want it on my desk by Friday. Sir, Gavin said, the first hint of confusion in his voice. The Metropolis Ball is this Saturday. That's a compressed timeline for a full hostile audit. I know, Marcus said, standing up. That's why you need to start now. He rode the elevator back up to the penthouse. The house was silent. He walked into their bedroom. Anna was asleep, her face relaxed and peaceful. Her simple grey dress was thrown over a chair, the dust and spilled drink a stark reminder. He picked it up, his touch gentle. He looked at the simple wool, the charity shop dress. He knew this dress. She'd bought it at a small boutique in Brooklyn when they were on an unplugged weekend. She'd loved it because it was unfussy. He hung it carefully in the back of his own closet. He would not let her throw it away. He would keep it as a reminder. He looked back at his sleeping wife. They thought she was simple. They thought she was nothing. They had no idea. She wasn't just his wife. She was his shield. She was the one who pulled him back from the brink, who reminded him of his own humanity, who kept the demon in its cage, and tonight the world had pushed his shield. He sat in the chair opposite the bed, watching her breathe. He would not sleep. He would sit, and he would plan. The Metropolis ball was on Saturday. He would let Hendrik van der Meer and his arrogant daughter have their front-runner status for a few more days. He would let them walk into that gala, believing the world was theirs for the taking. He was not a bully. He was a predator. And predators knew one thing above all else: patience. Saturday night. The air over Manhattan was crisp and clear, and the grand facade of the Metropolitan Museum of Art was lit up like a jewel box. This was the Metropolis Ball, the apex of the New York social calendar. It was a night where power, money, and art collided in a dazzling, dangerous spectacle. Inside, the great hall had been transformed. Towering arrangements of white orchids and silver branches reached toward the ceiling, glittering under the museum's famous lights. The sound of a string orchestra echoed softly, a civilized veneer over the raw ambition that thrummed in the room. Beatrice van der Meer was in her element. She wore a strapless, crimson Dior gown that was so voluminous it demanded its own zip code. Her blonde hair was swept up in an elaborate, painful-looking twist. She was holding court near the main staircase, Chloe and Tad flanking her, sipping baccarat flutes of champagne. "Daddy!" she trilled, spotting her father. "Isn't it divine? I feel like we own this place." Hendrik van der Meer, a portly man with a florid face, beamed at her. "Just a little longer, my dear. Tonight is the night. Marcus Blackwell is the guest of honor. He's sponsoring the entire new wing. I've been assured I will get 5 minutes with him. Just 5 minutes. And the Omega Project is ours." "Oh, it's ours, Daddy," Beatrice said, scanning the crowd. "I'll be sure to introduce myself. He's new money, after all. He needs someone like me to show him how things are done." "That's my girl," Hendrik said, patting her arm. Across the room, the main doors opened. The press line flashes, which had been constant, suddenly exploded into a frenzy. The orchestra faltered for a half-second. Marcus Blackwell had arrived. He was not what Beatrice had expected. She'd seen photos, of course, but they didn't do him justice. He wasn't wearing a flashy, fashion-forward tuxedo. He was in a simple, perfectly tailored black tux by a Savile Row tailor, so exclusive they didn't even have a website. He was tall, and he moved with the fluid, dangerous grace of a panther. But it wasn't him that held the room's attention. It was the woman on his arm. Anna. She was not the simple woman from the bar. Well, she was, but the world couldn't see it. Her red-gold hair was down, falling in soft waves over her shoulders. Her makeup was minimal, but it highlighted the astonishing clarity of her green eyes and the sharp intelligence of her features. And the dress. It was not crimson. It was not covered in sequins. It was a bespoke Bottega Veneta gown in a shade of deep, shimmering emerald green. It was deceptively simple, with a high neck and long sleeves, but it clung to her body as if it were spun from water. Around her neck was her only jewelry, but it was enough to silence the room. It was a necklace of brilliant cut diamonds, arranged not in a gaudy cascade, but in the precise, delicate pattern of the Orion constellation. It was a piece no one had ever seen before, because Marcus had designed it for her himself and had the stones custom cut. Beatrice van der Meer stared, her champagne flute frozen halfway to her mouth. "My God," Chloe whispered, her eyes wide. "Who is that?" I don't know," Beatrice said, her voice small. She squinted. She looks familiar? Probably some European royalty, Tad dismissed, already looking for a refill. Marcus and Anna glided through the room. They didn't stop for the air kisses and the schmoozing. They headed straight for the new technology wing. But a few people, a senator, a bank CEO, the mayor, managed to intercept them. Marcus was polite, but brief. His attention was, as always, entirely on his wife. He would take her hand, whisper something in her ear, and she would laugh. A real, genuine laugh that cut through the stuffy pretension of the room. They were a unit, an impenetrable fortress of two. Anna was, as always, nervous at these events. She hated the feeling of being on display. She held Marcus's arm tightly. "You okay, Annie?" he murmured, his lips near her ear. "Fine," she breathed. "It's just a lot of surfaces. No depth." "I know. We'll stay for the speeches. We'll say hello to the curator. And then I'm taking you home and we're ordering a pizza." "A pizza?" she said, smiling. "After all this, especially after all this." He was pulled away by the museum's director, leaving Anna alone for a moment. She drifted, as she always did, toward the art. She found herself in a quiet alcove, standing in front of a small, breathtaking Vermeer painting. She loved Vermeer. She loved the quiet, the light, the celebration of the ordinary. She was so lost in the painting, in the simple, profound beauty of a woman pouring milk, that she didn't hear the footsteps approach. "Well, well, well." The voice was like acid. Anna froze. She turned. Beatrice van der Meer was standing there, a smirk on her face. She was alone, having ditched her father and friends to network. I'm sorry," Anna said, confused. "Don't I'm sorry me," Beatrice sneered, her eyes raking over Anna's dress. "Nice knockoff. How did you get in? Did you come in through the kitchens? Are you working the event?" Anna just stared. Beatrice didn't recognize her. Without the grey wool dress, without the context of the bar, she was just another woman. I think you have me confused with someone else," Anna said, already trying to walk away. "Oh no," Beatrice said, blocking her path. She snapped her fingers. "I know exactly who you are. You're the stain! From the bar, the gilded garter." Her voice was rising, and a few people turned to look. "My God," Beatrice laughed, a loud, braying sound. "The nerve! You follow me here? Are you stalking me? I should have you arrested." "Ms. van der Meer," Anna said, her voice low and steady. "Please, you're making a scene." "I'm making a scene? You're the one who's trespassing. Waitress," she yelled at a passing server. "This woman isn't a guest. Call security. I want her removed." "Beatrice, what in God's name are you doing?" Hendrik, her father, was rushing over, his face red. "I'm handling this, Daddy. This pauper snuck in. She's probably here to steal the silver." "I am not," Anna said, her cheeks finally flushing with anger. This was too much. "Then who are you?" Beatrice shrieked. "You're a nobody. You're a simple, pathetic nothing." "She's not nothing." The voice cut through the air like a razor. Marcus Blackwell stepped into the alcove. He didn't look angry. He looked bored, which was, as his competitors knew, infinitely more terrifying. Beatrice froze. Her entire world stopped. Mr. Blackwell," she stammered, her face instantly shifting into a grotesque mask of fawning adoration. I'm so sorry. I was just dealing with this gatecrasher. She's been harassing me. You understand?" She smiled, a wide, desperate smile, expecting him to thank her. Marcus didn't even look at her. He looked only at Anna. He held out his hand. "Are you all right, my love?" Anna took his hand. "I'm fine, Marcus. Just tired." Beatrice's smile didn't fade. It collapsed. Her face went slack with a horror so profound it was almost comical. She looked at Marcus's hand, in Anna's. "My love?" she whispered. Hendrik van der Meer looked like he was having a heart attack. "Mr. Blackwell, I don't understand." Marcus finally turned his cold grey eyes on Beatrice. He gave her a polite, terrifying little smile. "Miss van der Meer, Mr. van der Meer, how wonderful to finally meet you in person." He pulled Anna gently to his side, his arm wrapping around her waist as if she were made of spun glass. "I'd like you to formally meet my wife, Annalise. Annalise Thorne Blackwell." Silence. It was a profound, suffocating silence that swallowed the orchestra, the chatter, and the clinking of glasses. The small crowd that had gathered to watch the scene was frozen. Beatrice van der Meer's face went from pale to white, to a sickening shade of grey. The baccarat flute she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the marble floor. "Wife!" she breathed. The word was a puff of air. Chloe and Tad had pushed through the crowd, arriving just in time to see the climax. Chloe's hand flew to her mouth. Tad's jaw was on the floor. But she's simple," Chloe blurted out, before Tad could slap a hand over her mouth. "She is," Marcus agreed, his voice dangerously soft. He looked down at Anna with a tenderness that made the air around them seem to warm. "She's simply the most brilliant, compassionate, and valuable person in this room. Something you," and his eyes snapped back to Beatrice, "wouldn't understand. Mr. Blackwell, I... Beatrice was hyperventilating. She turned to her father, desperate. "Daddy, I didn't know." "And that, Miss van der Meer, is the entire problem, isn't it?" Marcus said. He was no longer smiling. "You didn't know. So you assumed. You saw a woman, alone, dressed modestly, and you assumed she was nothing. You assumed she was trash." "No, it was a misunderstanding," Beatrice pleaded, her eyes darting around. She was looking for an exit, but she was penned in by her own creation. "A misunderstanding," Marcus said. "Let's be clear, shall we? I hate ambiguity." He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out, not a wallet, but his black, unmarked phone. He tapped the screen. "I believe you first met my wife last Tuesday, at the Gilded Garter." Beatrice's blood ran cold. I don't lie, Beatrice," Marcus commanded, and the force in his voice made her flinch. "I have a personal rule. I don't do business with liars or bullies." "Mr. Blackwell," Hendrik finally found his voice, stepping forward. He was sweating profusely. "I'm sure this is all a terrible mix-up. My daughter, she's high-strung. She's a criminal, Mr. van der Meer," Marcus said flatly. "Assault is, I believe, still a crime in this city." "Assault?" Beatrice shrieked. "I barely touched her." "Oh, I think you did more than touch her," Marcus said. He turned his phone so the screen was visible to the van der Meers and the now rapt audience. It wasn't Tad's grainy, shaky cam footage. It was crystal clear, high-definition, multi-angle CCTV footage. It was the feed from Gavin's security hub. He had edited it. The main screen showed the high-angle shot from the bar's camera. A picture-in-picture window showed a close-up on Beatrice's face, contorted with rage. A third window showed Tad gleefully filming, and the audio was pristine. The crowd watched in horrified silence as the entire scene played out. They heard, "You simple thing." They saw the deliberate, malicious shove. And they saw Annalise Blackwell, the wife of the most powerful man in the room, go crashing to the floor. The video ended. Marcus put his phone back in his pocket. Hendrik Vandermeer looked as if he'd been shot. He turned to his daughter, his face purple. "Beatrice, what did you do?" "It was a joke," she sobbed, her carefully constructed world detonating around her. She was a nobody. How was I supposed to know? "That's the point," Anna said. It was the first time she had spoken. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was so clear that everyone stopped to listen. She stepped away from Marcus, standing on her own. She looked directly at Beatrice, who was now a sobbing, mascara-streaked mess in a $1,000 dress. "You weren't," Anna said. "You weren't supposed to know. It shouldn't matter. My name, his name, that shouldn't change the way you treat a person. But it does. For you." "Mr. Blackwell, please," Hendrik begged, turning back to Marcus. He was a man watching his entire legacy evaporate. "The Omega Project, our families. We've been in New York for a century. You can't—" Marcus held up a hand. "Mr. Vandermeer, Blackwell Industries is built on a simple foundation, structural integrity. We build things that last. We build things you can trust." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "Your daughter," he continued, "has just shown me that your family's foundation is rotten. It lacks integrity. It lacks compassion. It lacks basic human decency. You don't see a nobody. You see someone you can step on. And I cannot and will not partner with a company that believes that is an acceptable way to move through the world." He looked past Hendrik to his own head of PR, who was watching from the wings. "Sarah," he called out, "please make a note. Blackwell Industries is officially reopening the bidding on the Omega Project. The Vandermeer Holdings proposal is to be shredded, effective immediately, and list the reason for the contract denial as a fundamental and irreconcilable misalignment of core values." It was a corporate execution. It was a social execution. In 30 seconds, Marcus Blackwell hadn't just slammed a door. He had burned the entire house to the ground. Hendrik Vandermeer sank onto a nearby velvet bench, his head in his hands. Beatrice just stared. The reality of what had happened, the sheer, unmitigated scale of her ruin, was too vast to comprehend. The ballroom was silent. The orchestra had stopped. The whispers had died. All anyone could do was watch the fallout. Marcus turned back to Anna, his face softening instantly. "Are you ready to go? I'm craving that pizza." Anna nodded, but her eyes were still on Beatrice. The woman who, 10 minutes ago, had been the queen of the ball, was now an outcast. She was utterly alone. Chloe and Tad had vanished, evaporating into the crowd the moment the video played, desperate to avoid the shrapnel. Beatrice looked up, her tear-filled eyes meeting Anna's. There was no anger left, just a hollow, desolate confusion. You could have just told me," she whispered, a child's pathetic defense. "At the bar. You could have said who you were." "And what?" Anna asked, her voice gentle but firm. "So you could have apologized. So you could have fawned over me, like you did with my husband. So you could have treated me well, not because I was a person, but because I was powerful." She shook her head. "That's not respect, Beatrice. That's fear. That's calculation. It's simple." She used the word deliberately. Beatrice flinched as if she'd been struck. Anna took a step closer. Marcus tensed, but she put a hand on his arm. "It's okay." She knelt, just for a second, so she was at eye level with the seated, broken woman. "The dress you ruined at the bar," Anna said, her voice so quiet only Beatrice and Marcus could hear. "The grey wool one. It was a gift from my sister. The one I was waiting for. She bought it for me at a little shop on 34th Street. It cost $49. It was my favorite dress. Beatrice looked up, confused. What? The value, Beatrice, Anna said, standing up. It was never in the dress. It was in the person who wore it. It was in the sister who gave it. It was in the moment. You can't see that. You see price tags, you see logos, you see status. You're blind to everything that actually matters. She looked at the shattered flute on the floor. You're not a bad person, Beatrice. You're just an empty one. And I truly, genuinely hope you find a way to fill that. With something real. She turned away. She took Marcus's hand. That, Anna said, is everything I deserve. Marcus looked at his wife, his admiration for her so profound it was a physical ache in his chest. He smiled. Pizza. Now. Now, she agreed. They walked out. They didn't run. They didn't rush. They walked, hand in hand, straight through the center of the great hall. The crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. They left behind the shattered glass, the ruined reputation, and the stunned silence. As the great doors closed behind them, the sound of the room rushed back in. The whispers, the phone calls, the sound of a life history being rewritten in real time. By the time Hendrik van der Meer got his daughter off the bench, his phone was already vibrating with calls from his board of directors. By the time they reached the coat check, the first blog post had already gone live. By the time their car pulled away from the curb, Tad Beaumont had deleted his entire social media presence, and Chloe Davies's father was already drafting a public statement distancing his family from the unfortunate behavior of Ms. van der Meer. In the back of the Maybach, Anna kicked off her high-end heels and sighed, wiggling her toes. "You were amazing," Marcus said, pulling her close. "I was terrified," she admitted. "My hands are still shaking." "I know." He kissed her knuckles. "Heads up, David," he said to the intercom. "Change of plans. We're not going home." Anna looked at him. "No pizza?" "Oh, there will be pizza," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "But first," David pulled the car up not to their brownstone, but to a small, brightly lit, 24-hour diner on the Lower East Side. "Marcus." "What?" "This," he said, "is where we had our first date. After that Quantum Physics for Poets lecture. Remember? You explained string theory to me using a napkin and 2 forks. And you paid in quarters," she said, smiling. "I did." He opened the door for her. "I thought, before we go back to being the Blackwells, we could just be Marcus and Anna and have a truly terrible cup of coffee." She took his hand. "That," she said, "sounds perfect." They walked into the diner, the smell of old coffee and frying onions enveloping them. A man in a billion-dollar suit and a woman in an emerald green gown slid into a cracked vinyl booth. The waitress didn't blink. This was New York, after all. "What'll it be, folks?" she asked, popping her gum. Marcus looked at Anna, his eyes full of a love so profound it needed no words. "2 coffees," he said, "and whatever you've got. For my wife. She's had a long night." The coffee was, as Marcus had promised, truly terrible. It was thin, tasted slightly burnt, and was served in a thick-walled, beige mug that had a small chip on the rim. It was, Anna decided, the best cup of coffee she had ever had. They sat in the cracked vinyl booth, the harsh fluorescent lights of the 24-hour diner buzzing overhead, and they talked. They didn't talk about the gala, or the Omega Project, or the spectacular implosion of Beatrice van der Meer. They talked about the new biography Anna was reading. They argued, playfully, about whether they should try to grow tomatoes on the roof next spring. They talked about the stray cat Marcus had seen in their private garden, and he'd made a mental note to have David set out some food. For an hour, they were invisible. They were just two people, in love, sharing a plate of lukewarm French fries. The emerald green Bottega gown looked strangely at home against the Formica table, and Marcus's Savile Row tuxedo was just a suit. This was their reality. The galas, the boardrooms, the billions. That was the noise. This, the quiet, the simple, the real. This was the signal. As they left, Marcus, in a move of pure nostalgia, paid in cash, leaving a $100 bill on the table for the two $2.50 coffees. The waitress, unfazed, simply pocketed it. "You kids have a good night," she called after them. When they arrived back at the brownstone, the first editions of the morning papers were already being digitally distributed. Gavin had, as always, been thorough. A single, discreetly placed news item had broken, not in the gossip columns, but in the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal. Vandermeer Holdings plummets in pre-market trading as Blackwell Industries cites core value misalignment in Omega project denial. The story was dry, professional, and utterly devastating. The video, the gala, the why, that would remain a whispered legend, the kind of story that defined New York society for a decade. The Vandermeers' ruin was absolute, not just financial, but social. They were, in the parlance of the world they'd championed, nobody. Marcus saw the alert on his phone, read the headline, and powered the device off. Upstairs, Anna was already in the kitchen, making the pot of tea she'd wanted 3 nights ago. Marcus found her there, having shed the green dress for one of his old, worn-out cashmere sweaters that was 5 sizes too big. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist as she watched the water boil. "Pizza's on the way," he murmured into her hair. "Extra pepperoni." She leaned back against him, holding her warm mug. "Good," she whispered. "I'm starving." The demon of Silicon Alley and the simple wife stood in their quiet kitchen, waiting for a pizza, illuminated only by the light over the stove. The world outside could keep its judgment. They had found their value long ago. And that's the story of Annalise Blackwell. It's a powerful reminder that wealth isn't about what you wear, and power isn't about what you can take. True strength, real class, is about how you treat people who have nothing to offer you. It's about the grace you show when you're at your lowest, and the character you have when no one is watching. The bullies in this life, the Beatrice Vandermeers, they only see the price tag. But people like Anna, they know the value. What did you think of Anna's final words to Beatrice? Was Marcus's revenge too harsh or exactly what she deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this story of justice and quiet strength, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.